A warm welcome, please, for Minister Eyre.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be back, not only in person, but also full circle. I was a pretty new energy minister the last time I was here, and it means a lot to me to give what will really be my last speech as energy minister, at least for the time being, now former minister, to this crowd. Being that minister has been the honor of my working life. It really has. I love this sector. It will always be so incredibly close to my heart. You are resilient, you are innovative, you make this province great. It was amazing to see, thank you. And it was amazing to see and hear from the legends today. Like Vide said, we would all like to be 17 again, have our lives ahead of us. But now we are where we are, and I am where I am, and certainly for me, the work continues. And in my new file as Minister of Justice, there will still be a lot of crossover with energy as we continue to deal with the federal government and take them on so many issues, on so many constitutional issues. I think the most important thing is we cannot continue to be treated in the West and in Saskatchewan with contempt. And whether it's asymmetrical federalism or a nation within a nation, whatever it's called, the constitutional treatment of Saskatchewan can no longer be based on economic punishment. I think we can all agree when it comes to the energy conversation that the whole world is tearing up the script, the conventional script, and we're adjusting to what the Bank of America just last month called a new energy world order. And it told investors to buy Canada. The irony not being lost. I mean, the numbers, of course, have become impossible to ignore. Energy is by far the best performing sector of the past year. What a difference a year makes, what a difference 2 years make. But we know that investment in Canadian energy, any stability at all, has been in spite of, not because of our federal government, and because provinces such as Saskatchewan have fought the pro-energy fight. I've been in energy in this file for the past 4 years, and I certainly have had to tear up the script a few times myself. When I started, Energy East had recently been nixed. Kinder Morgan was walking away from TMX, which of course now we all became owners of. A final destiny of that pipeline TBD. Northern Gateway had been federally axed, severely cutting increased export access to the west then as well as the east. And Bill C-69, we've talked about it a couple times today and in the news recently, a very positive, strongly worded decision from the Alberta Court of Appeal on the violation that bill poses to Canada's constitutional division of powers. I was in Nunavut in a federal provincial ministers conference in 2018. Minister Sohi was then federal minister of natural resources. Alberta was still under the NDP. And I urged Ontario counterparts not to sign the conference joint statement, whatever it's called, and so in effect to walk out in protest at Bill C-69 because it was a pipeline killer, it was a project killer, it was an investment killer, and it's an energy killer, and a massive violation of provincial jurisdiction. And so we walked out, and we began the fight, including before the Canadian Senate on Bill C-48 and C-69, to raise awareness about the deeply destructive impact of both those bills. We know Bill C-69 has nothing to do with streamlining, has nothing to do with investment transparency, as the federal government claims. If anything, things are more confusing than ever, as well as more geographically inconsistent than ever. We have the Bay du Nord project in Newfoundland, rapidly approved federally under Bill C-69 because apparently offshore light oil is best in class, better in class than Western oil. But if reducing emissions is the goal, is the federal goal, consider the reality. Oil and gas generated emissions in Canada have been more or less flat for 20 years. That's Natural Resource Canada's own finding. And if every oil and gas producing nation on the planet extracted and regulated oil and gas the way we do in Canada, global greenhouse gas emissions would instantly fall by 25%. That predates Bill C-69. So in effect, the federal government wants to cap production on what essentially is already more or less flat. Canadian oil, Western Canadian oil, that includes, of course, oil drilled off the coast of Newfoundland, is already best in class. And now, as we confront, let's call it the new energy world order, the new geopolitical shift that we're seeing, wouldn't it be helpful to have Energy East? Wouldn't it be helpful when it comes to helping our partners overseas, when it comes to helping ourselves, to have the Saguenay liquid natural gas facility, which, recall, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway Group walked away from a few years ago. Why? Because of political investment instability in this country. Saguenay was another project killed by Bill C-69. So it's been quite the time, quite the arc in energy over the last 4 years. Another key backdrop, of course, has been the federal carbon tax, another fight from the Saskatchewan government's perspective. And I read an interesting headline recently. It went, as carbon pricing continues to climb, feds can't pin down its effect. In other words, how much carbon is actually being reduced. Federal Environment Minister Guilbeault's office said, unfortunately, we don't have the specific data to respond to this question at this stage. That's not good. And while it's not, of course, rocket science, that as Blacklock's recently put it, carbon taxes may slow economic growth for decades, or that taxing fuel to lower emissions will cut workers' net incomes. The Federal Budget Office recently came out with this, quote, Canada has unique needs as a vast northern country for heating and transportation. You don't say. I've started to say that every global climate conference should start the first night with delegates from around the world having to figure out how to survive without fossil fuels in -40 outside for 24 hours. A good get-to-know-you session. When it comes to carbon pricing, I offer this too, as important context for Saskatchewan and from Saskatchewan's perspective. Not only that our province makes up only 0.15% of global emissions, but in terms of emissions intensity, which instead of per capita is the most important gauge, Saskatchewan's emissions fell by 20% between 2008 and 2020, while GDP went up by 12%. Those are good numbers. We don't need economic punishment when we have those numbers. And one of the key reasons for that decrease has been our work around methane reduction. First, by 50%, well ahead of our own goals. We were congratulated on Twitter by Minister Guilbeault on that one. But he didn't congratulate us 2 weeks ago when we then announced that we'd reduced emissions by 60%. I guess the news just becomes too good. I do want to highlight a few things. My quick elevator pitch on energy. This last time, the Accelerated Site Closure Program administered by Saskatchewan continues to get great reviews from you, the sector, and that's, of course, the most important thing. Thank you for all your great work within that program. It came and it had to be soundly administered at a very, very important time. And as the geopolitical conversation on energy changes, the world is watching Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan Oil, our explicit goal to increase production to 600,000 barrels per day by 2030, they're watching that. It's also watching Saskatchewan on critical minerals, uranium, potash, rare earths, cobalt, nickel, copper, and helium. We've carried out geological surveys in this province, 88,000 wells, and we know we can supply 10% of global helium market demand by 2030. We have the largest purification facility now in Canada. The next step is liquefaction. We want to be a central hub for northern states and our Western Canadian neighbors. And I'll tell you, it does make a difference to promote our province in person to investors and industry folks. I was in Houston in December. Saskatchewan co-sponsored the Helium Summit. I addressed a full house of people who were there to hear about Saskatchewan. It was a very proud moment to be up there under our brand, Saskatchewan, Canada, in lights, and to have people come up to me afterward and tell me, we didn't know how far along you guys were when it came to helium exploration, or that you can sustain dedicated wells because it's so green. The threshold is so high, it's mixed with nitrogen. And they told me, you're doing things in the regulatory space and every other space in Saskatchewan that other jurisdictions, Arizona, Alberta, they should be doing. We're interested. So it is about spreading the word and drumming up interest and investment. That's the way business has always worked. In-person networking, connections, promotion. And now more than ever, that is our job. We have to beat our own drum. In Saskatchewan, if the federal government won't, foreign investment in this country is down 50% and growing. So as an export-based economy, we've got to get the word out. We've got to tell our story. We've also got to keep telling our story on CCUS, enhanced oil recovery. I have always said the one story cannot be told without the other. We will always stand firmly behind enhanced oil recovery in this province. It is part of our broader belief that we have to build on our natural, traditional energy strengths, never turn our back on our 30,000 energy workers in this province and their families, all they do for our province. And of course, they can be, you can be, we all can be severely affected by the just transition or unjust transition. If it's carried out too quickly, too politically, 500,000 energy workers could lose their jobs in this country. That's according to a recent report by TD Bank. And the workers here in the Southeast who were federally mandated off coal, they are the great cautionary tale when it comes to what just transition can mean. Don Braid of the Calgary Herald recently wrote, "The feds have done nothing to help them and have no working plan to start, despite many promises. If Ottawa can't manage transition for that group, how will it deal with the thousands expected to leave oil and gas, as well as agriculture, even forestry, because of emissions policy?" We cannot let that happen. We cannot let that happen to First Nations, whose silent majority, Dale Swampy, told the Federal Committee on Oil and Gas Emissions Caps, know what the impact will be on First Nations economies and their ability to participate in Canada's resource economy. Everyone complains, he said, about emissions, but, quote, "I never hear real solutions. We need an energy plan that doesn't ruin our economy." We must heed that. Finally, I want to quote an unconventional source, the Saudi energy minister. I don't make a habit of quoting the Saudi energy minister, but he was recently asked whether he thought geopolitical events would speed up the so-called energy transition. And he said, "I think it's provided us with a reality check in terms of how aspirations can be compromised by the realities of the day." Even before the Ukraine crisis, the tragedy unfolding there, he said, "The la-la land scenario about net zero has been smacked with so many realities. We all have to beware of the la-la land scenarios. La-la land scenarios that include, of course, importing too much oil from Saudi Arabia. We also have to be aware of casual, passive, as well as, of course, actively anti-energy stances. They have consequences. And it's not just the federal Liberals, my friends. It's also the mini-me's in our opposition NDP in this province. Anti-Northern Gateway, coal is low-hanging fruit, Twitter cheering energy layoffs, claiming oil companies want production caps. Beware, false friends. And we must take full account of this current geopolitical reality check and keep fighting the good fight. It is an honor. It is an honor to be here with you, to have represented the energy sector for the past 4 years, and this badge I am keeping with pride. Thank you guys so much for everything you do. Have a great night.